Hello. So there was an election this past week in Bolivia, which went absolutely horribly and disastrously for the electoral left, who previously have been quite dominant in Bolivian politics for the last 15-20 years or so. And I want to talk about what actually happened here and how this happened, because it is a huge thing, very bad, very much not good, which is very likely going to result in the wholesale sell-off of the Bolivian state and Bolivia's natural resources to the highest, more than likely, Western bidder. So for a bit of background here, in case you don't know, I have longer videos about this on my main channel, but basically in 2019, there was a coup in Bolivia, a military coup. The military installed an unknown right-wing senator as the president and forced the president Evo Morales, who was winning the elections at the time, out of the country on allegations of electoral fraud that have since been proven to be completely bunk. The MAS party then came back to power again in 2020 with Luis Arce, the previous minister of the economy, as the new president, as they won in the first round very resoundingly. New election after pressure against the dictatorship forced them to allow a vote. And they still failed to win, even despite using all of the resources of the state to try and win the election. And then after that, things went very badly, and most of this is to blame on Evo Morales. Evo Morales has 3 times been elected president of Bolivia. You know, he was a very good president. He presided over a ton of particularly economic advancement in the country, and brought the country's majority indigenous population to the forefront for the very first time. Notwithstanding that, he is very much all about himself, as he has revealed in the last 5 years or so, and he simply could not really abide by the fact that the party was trying to move on without him, that the left in the country was trying to sort of move on without him, and he kicked up a massive fuss over all of this. This has resulted in like 5 straight years of pure political chaos in Bolivia. Like, no one even knows what the MAS party is at this point, because Evo Morales claims to have, as the party's president, expelled Luis Arce and basically everyone else involved in the government from the party. He has been claiming to be like attacked by government thugs and stuff. He has famously, or not very famously, because you probably haven't heard this before, backed some bizarre like minor small uprisings where like people took soldiers hostage and stuff. But he was barred from running in the 2025 elections because, you know, he's already been president 3 times, and he still insisted on running again, on trying to run again at least, which he didn't end up being allowed to do. And as a result of him just being totally unable to like take a back seat, even just for a short time, and basically demanding to be at the head of everything, always, all the time, like he was before, this caused like unimaginable chaos for the Bolivian left. The government lost a lot of its support, not just because of Evo Morales' influence, but because they've been dealing with a lot of this shit that he's been doing, which has made it harder for them to focus on things that actually make sense. You know, not that they've been amazing or anything, but they've certainly been a lot better than the alternatives and Evo Morales at this point. But they've certainly been a lot better than the alternatives, and Evo Morales at this point should never, ever be trusted with like being at the head of anything. So they're certainly better than what he would probably be like. And all of this total chaos resulted in basically a massive electoral catastrophe where combined the left ended up getting like 15 to 20% of the vote, and 2 right-wing candidates came first and second in the first round of voting and are going to be contesting the second round in a runoff. And this happened because in the last 5 years, the enthusiasm for electoral politics has gone kaput, basically all because of this Evo Morales like internal mass conflict stuff. The MAS candidate in this election barely got any of the vote, and he actually lost overall in voting to a new splinter led by Andrónico Rodriguez, who is a much younger coca grower union leader, same sort of background that Evo Morales has. And Rodriguez himself comes from the MAS party. His new little party / alliance is a splinter of the MAS party that was formed sort of in response to this clusterfuck that's been going on, where no one knows what the party is anymore. No one knows who actually leads it. No one knows who's actually in it. It's just been totally dismantled, all in this ridiculous power struggle, in this ridiculous, like, 5-year-long prolonged temper tantrum led by Evo Morales. And a lot of news outlets are going to be talking about this and saying, like, wow, this was a devastating defeat for the left. You know, people are tired of these goddamn lefty socialist policies or whatever. But that's really Really not what happened. What actually happened is that this shit just made people massively disillusioned with electoral politics in general. So this is the election results here on Wikipedia, which is very reliable with just showing basic facts like election results. So all of this chaos, this clusterfuck, the fact that Evo Morales basically put all of his like personal recognition and power as an individual, you know, a 15-year-long president of the country, into doing everything that he possibly could to try and make the country ungovernable, and especially to essentially sabotage any potential, like, unified left-wing candidate in the presidential elections, led to this utter catastrophe here. You can see Rodrigo Paz Pereira, he is just like center right winger of the Christian Democratic Party. Jorge Quiroga, who is like a far right winger. Previously, he was the vice president of the dictator Hugo Banzer, so he's very much culpable in crimes against humanity himself. And now is in the presidential election runoff. Isn't that great? And in fourth place, we have the first left wing candidate with only 400,000 votes, Andrónico Rodriguez, 8%. And then the mass candidate, Eduardo del Castillo, with 3% of the vote, 169,000. Nice. That's utterly catastrophic. And you can really tell from some of these statistics here that people are really just fed up with all of the chaotic bullshit that has been going on with Evo Morales just wreaking fucking havoc on the country's left wing, particularly in the invalid votes. That's like spoiled votes. You're like, you know, if you draw a dick on your vote, that's where it goes. Because Evo Morales told people who support him to spoil their votes. And this resulted in 1.4 million spoiled votes. 20% of the total votes were invalid, in contrast to around 200,000 or 3 to 4% in the previous two elections. So that's about 1.2 million votes that otherwise would have gone to the left. And when you tally that up with the two left-wing candidates, that means that the left overall got 1.8 million votes, which would have put them in first place. You know, not very good, but still around 33% of the total vote, and they would have gotten to the second round runoff if they had presented a united front, if Evo Morales had actually backed whoever was presented, if he didn't insist completely on running himself always and everything always being centered around him, this wouldn't have happened. And that's not even considering the fact that the left probably would have gotten even more votes than that, significantly more, if they had just presented like a remotely united front for the previous 5 years, instead of this very public, endless tantrum being thrown by Evo fucking Morales. He is engaged in possibly the worst ever record behavior of a single individual in history, and it's actually just crazy. Like, he single-handedly ensured that the left would be ousted from power in Bolivia here in something that would have been considered unthinkable just 5 years ago, when Mas absolutely stomped in the first round, winning with 55% of the vote. There are so many different ways that Evo Morales could have approached this. You know, he could have stayed on the sidelines, taken like a role as like a mentor sort of guy, like what would you call it? Like an elder statesman, like fucking, I hate how they call Obama that, but you know what I mean. He could have waited until like 2030 and run as like someone's vice president, or even 2025 and run as someone's vice president. He could have waited for like the next government when the left wins and like taken a ministerial position. You know, he could have done everything that he possibly could have to ensure the party and like this electoral left movement that he had helped to build was long-lasting and not just centered around him. But he didn't do that. He did the exact opposite of that. He just can't imagine not being president himself, not being the center of everyone's attention. And it's fucking sad and pathetic given how good his free governments actually were. And it's really making me doubt whether he was ever much more than like a charismatic figurehead, and that it wasn't most of the people behind the scenes who made his government so actually successful. Or, you know, the less noticed people like the ministers and stuff. This is just pathetic, sad, stupid, and it should be a warning to everyone to never put all your eggs into like the basket of just one politician, because this is the sort of thing that can happen. It is incredibly sad that in the end, a political party was built from the ground up with a lot of help from Evo Morales. He did more than anyone else to do so, and then utterly destroyed by that same person, rather than him just allowing it to become something that would outlast himself, that would, you know, move on without him. Very sad, very pathetic, very criminal, honestly. And one has to wonder what the fuck he was even thinking here, because, you know, if the right wing gets into power in Bolivia, the first thing they're going to do is like hit Evo Morales with a bunch of trumped up charges and throw him in jail and like liberate all the people, or, you know, like the previous dictator, Jenny Nanez, who's in jail for massacring a bunch of indigenous protesters back in 2019. So what is he even going to do, like, individually as a person as a result of what he did here? What is his fucking plan here? What a fucking idiot. What a fucking moron. What a dumb fuck. What else can you say about this? This sucks. This just fucking blows. That this is potentially the end of a movement that took 20 plus years to build, that took one of South America's poorest countries and bettered the lives of most people in it by like 10 times. That this is what they have become, mostly due to the actions of one single person wrecking everything, is insane. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say about that.